You know, we all think we know what it means to be a child versus an adult, but what if those definitions are just completely wrong? What if the real difference has nothing to do with your age and has everything to do with how you learn? Today, we're going to dive into a framework that redefines what it means to grow up. And believe me, it applies to everything, from a single person to an entire civilization.
So let's just start with this question that I'm sure we've all asked ourselves at some point. What really separates childish behavior from adult behavior? Well, it turns out the answer isn't about how many birthdays you've had. It's about the very structure of learning itself.
And this right here makes that abstract idea crystal clear. Okay, think about making a mistake. The child state response, you hide it. You protect yourself at all costs. But the adult state response is the complete opposite. You bring the mistake out into the open so the whole system, whether that's you, your team, or your company, can learn from it and actually get stronger. It's the exact same situation, but two totally different ways of approaching growth.
To really get this difference, we have to look at the engine that's driving all growth. It's something called the learning network, and it's powered by this really simple, repeating cycle.
So, what in the world is a learning network? Honestly, it can be almost anything. Your brain, an AI, a company, even a whole field of science. The important part isn't what it's made of, but the fact that it has this core process, a feedback loop that lets it constantly update its own internal map of the world.
And here's that loop broken down. It's this continuous cycle, right? First, you observe the world around you. Then, based on your own internal model, you form an expectation, a prediction of what's going to happen next. Then, you act on that prediction, and that action creates a brand new observation, which either confirms your model was right or tells you it's time to correct it. This is happening constantly, in all of us, all the time.
This brings us to this really powerful twist on Descartes' famous I think, therefore I am. Instead, we get disco ergo sum. I learn, therefore I am. This completely reframes our existence. We're not just a static state of thinking, we're a dynamic, ongoing process of learning and updating. A system is what it learns.
Okay, so now that we have that foundation, let's see how this learning loop gives us a completely new way to define what it means to be a child or an adult.
So, a network in the child state is kind of like a young tree that needs a stake to grow straight. It's absolutely learning, don't get me wrong, but it needs external support, this scaffolding, from more mature networks to keep its own feedback processes running properly. It's in a state of, well, structural dependency.
The adult state, on the other hand, is defined by what's called autonomous interdependence. Now, autonomy means it can manage its own learning loops. It can correct itself. But that interdependence part is just as important. It means it recognizes it's part of a bigger network, and it actively helps to scaffold the next generation of learners.
This table shows us the signs you can actually see. Take accountability, for example. The child state deflects responsibility, blames other people for failure. The adult state accepts its role and works to repair the damage. Or look at update behavior. The child state resists changing its mind, while the adult state actually initiates updates when it gets new information. And these aren't moral judgments, they're just structural signatures.
Now, this whole journey from child to adult sounds pretty straightforward, but here's the thing, it's not guaranteed. The process can get stuck or go wrong in some really fascinating and pretty destructive ways.
Which of course leads to the big question, does every learning system actually make it to adulthood? And the simple, maybe even a little unsettling answer is no.
One way things can go sideways is with what's called pseudo-maturity. This is a network that looks like an adult. It says all the right things, it performs the rituals of accountability, but it's all just an act. Underneath, it's missing that core ability to actually self-correct. It's a kind of structural hypocrisy. The signals it sends out don't match the effect it's actually having.
The other major pitfall is developmental arrest. This is when a network just gets stuck. It might have all the capacity it needs to become an adult, but it never learns how to manage its own learning loops. And this often happens when that external scaffolding is never taken away, so the network is never forced to learn how to stand on its own 2 feet.
All right, this is where the framework gets really, really powerful. We can take this lens, this idea of child and adult learning networks, and apply it to pretty much any complex system you can imagine. Think about AI. Instead of just trying to control it, what if we thought about how to, well, raise it? How do we build the right kind of scaffolding so that an AI can mature into a reliable, adult partner that actually strengthens our networks, instead of becoming some super powerful system that's just stuck in a destructive child state?
This also helps explain why some companies or organizations just seem to thrive while others stagnate. A successful company is basically an adult learning network. It has these built-in ways to self-correct. A failing one? It's often stuck in a state of developmental arrest, just repeating the same mistakes over and over because it's lost the ability to update its own core beliefs.
And now let's zoom out to the biggest scale possible. A civilization survives by passing things down through generations. But if it only passes down what it knows and not how to update that knowledge, it becomes brittle. A healthy civilization is an adult network that teaches its next generation how to learn.
And this brings us right to the core message, the ultimate takeaway of this whole framework. What is it that one generation truly owes the next?
Here's the crucial point. It's not enough to just pass on information. For any learning network to survive across generations, it has to pass on three key things. First, sure, the knowledge itself. But way more importantly, it has to pass on the architecture for updating that knowledge. And third, a shared commitment to protecting that process, no matter what.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. Whether we're talking about raising a child, building an AI, or running a country, this is the ultimate test. Are we just passing on a static library of facts? Or are we passing on the living, breathing capacity to learn, to discover what we don't even know yet? Because that is the difference between a legacy that lasts and one that just fades away.